And we can see this maybe in one of two ways. We can see it playfully. Love means giving something you don't have to someone who doesn't want it. I heard this story one time, and I don't know if it's true, but God, I really hope it's true. It was a story of an old man and an old woman. They were like in their 80s, I think it was. And they got married when they were like 18 and 19. I know they've been married for over 60 years. 60 years. And aside from times that they were apart, like out of town or whatever, apparently they had this ritual where every night they would, in fact, I saw this story. It was an old man telling the story, so that's why I want to believe it's true. He said that every night they would eat toast before bed. And it wasn't just like they were hungry, it was like they would make the toast, and while they made it, they would talk. And then that gave them time every day at the end of the day to debrief with each other. So how was your day? Tell me about your day. And then they would butter the toast, and then they would eat it. And apparently, every time they got to the end of the loaf, the old man would give his wife the end piece. You know?
The ugly piece no one wants?
Exactly, the ugly piece that nobody wants. And so apparently one day he was describing that she finally broke down after like 60-something years of this and said, "What the hell? We've been married, you give me, every time this thing comes up at the beginning and the end, you give me the end piece, you give me the ugly piece of bread. Like, I know you love me, and I know that you take care of me, and you're always doing good stuff for me. Why do you keep giving me the worst piece of bread?" And the old man, as he's telling the story, he starts laughing. And why do you suppose he's laughing? Come on, put your cynicism aside for just a second. Put your beautiful eyes on for a second. Why do you suppose he's giving her that piece of bread?
He probably didn't want it either.
He didn't want it either? It's his favorite piece of bread. He just never asked. He just assumed, and he said he was laughing. He goes, "I've been giving you my favorite piece of bread for 60 years. And if they just communicated a little bit, they both would have been happy. He'd have gotten the piece of bread that he liked, and she'd have gotten the piece of bread that she liked. But in her mind for 60 years, it was bugging her because she thought that he was doing something terrible. I didn't say terrible, but bad. But it turns out to have actually been something really sweet and beautiful. And this made me think of that. Love means giving something you don't have to someone who doesn't want it. Yeah, you've got that one piece of bread, but it's like, here you go. And then she didn't want it, but she took it anyway. Why? Because she thought that he didn't want it. So she was doing something she thought was nice. He was doing something he thought was nice. Turns out, but it was nice because the intention was sweet. But it just would have been so much better if they had just communicated. And I think a lot of times in life we're going to find that communication is going to solve a lot of problems, man. There's miscommunication between people. We think that people are doing things for one reason, when they're really not. They're doing it for another reason. We get confused by that. We kind of superimpose ourselves on that. Some of you are that personality type, perhaps, that if someone kept giving you that end piece of bread, you would have thought, well, this must be their favorite. Many of us are the type of person who would probably be receiving that end piece of bread and think, God, they keep giving me this end piece of bread. And we see it in the worst possible way. In whichever way it is that you see the world, but however you see the world, the way that you see the world could have been updated just by saying something, asking a question. By the way, another way she also could know was to just say one day, "Oh, I don't want the end piece. We'll open a new loaf." And then he would have found out earlier what that was, But second period came up with something interesting as well. So love means giving something you don't have to someone who doesn't want it. So think about the kinds of things that a person would grow up not having. So what are some things you'd grow up by not having? Yeah.
To be honest, I grew up without new shoes so much.
Without what?
Without new shoes.
New shoes. So maybe you're going to grow up without shoes. And so if you grew up without shoes, what are you going to make sure that the person you love has?
Shoes.
Shoes, yeah. So because you didn't have shoes, you're going to make sure that they do have shoes. Now, actually, it's interesting. A friend of mine, actually, her husband loves him some shoes, man. This guy is just, a shoe file. And she is not this way. So how do you think he shows her love? He buys her all kinds of shoes all the time. But he's into, sneakers. He's a sneakerhead. So he buys her, she has, I'm not exaggerating, she has, I think she said 6 pairs of Jordans. And I've only ever seen her wear one of them. You know, she's like, yeah, my closet's full of them. He sees that she doesn't wear them, but he still thinks like, but I'm still showing my love to you. Are there other ways that he could be saving that money to show love to her in a way that she appreciates? Well, yeah, of course, if he would just pay attention. But you can see that's kind of a selfish type of love. I'm going to give you the thing that I want, even though you don't want it because, you know, I didn't have it. That's how I show it. So I guess you could see it one of two ways. You could say, okay, accept the shoes from this person because, you know, it's not about you, it's about them, and this is them trying to show love, and you can appreciate that. Or another way of looking at it is that's a very selfish thing for them to do, to not take into account the way that you would want it to be shown to them. Because you're going to find out sometimes that the way that you want to show love is not the way the person wants to receive it. And again, I encourage you to think about this beyond just, you know, romantic love. This is also with regards to friends. This is with regards to family. Any kind of a relationship that you're in with people generally. The way that you show somebody appreciation might be different than the way that they want to receive appreciation. Now, having said that, second semester we're going to look at a guy named Carl Jung.
Oh.
Yeah, and we had a quote, I think, from him already, maybe not. But he develops these things called the archetypes. And it's a long story. But have any of you guys ever played Assassin's Creed before? Yeah, that's all based off the psychology of Carl Jung. The whole idea of the anima, the animus, the genetic memories, the whole series there is based off of his psychology. And what's fascinating is that as time has gone on, he died, I think, in 1961, I think it was. As time has gone on, we're finding out that more and more of what the guy said was actually true. So, for example, the idea that you can inherit memories from your ancestors, it turns out that that's true. We actually have a component in our DNA now where it seems that particularly catastrophic memories are passed down through DNA, particularly traumatic ones. So, if your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother watched your great-great-great-great-grandfather get eaten by a tiger, that is something that if she saw it happen, that's something that actually could have been imprinted on her DNA, that experience, and that is passed down. So now, figure whatever it is, hundreds of years later, if you're sitting there and you see tigers and you're like, I don't like tigers. Why? I just don't like them. Maybe this very well might be why. Like, you guys know bobcats? Yeah, I hate bobcats. So, me being me, I sit there sometimes, I'll go to the zoo and I'm like, how would I fight a giraffe? And I think I could take a giraffe because they got really long necks. So if I can get to his back, I think I can choke a giraffe out. How do you fight a bear? I don't think you fight a bear. I'll punch a baby bear in his shit. But like a full-grown bear, I don't know how you fight that thing. Like I just saw a video recently of a baby bear. It's like attacking a dog, and the dog like running back, and then it's a surveillance, and then the dad comes running out of the house, and he gets all big, and he chases the baby bear away. Someone sent this to me, and that's when I started thinking, like, so how do I fight a baby bear? Because you know that mama bear is not far away, so you have to make short work of the baby bear. So that's the kind of stuff I started thinking about. How would I fight this wild animal? And I actively want to fight a bobcat, because they're not big, they're just fake-ass tigers, they're just, you know, glorified house cats, but they have that look on their face all the time. They look like they want to start shit with you. I was just messaging with someone a couple of days ago because they sent whatever. I don't like bobcats. Now I wonder if years ago, I don't know, 100, you know, whatever, 500 years ago, I wonder if one of my ancestors was sitting there eating some soup and a bobcat came over and pissed in his soup while he was eating. And that was so traumatic to him that now there's a hatred of bobcats that gets passed down in our genetic code. Yeah.
Let's read Romeo and Juliet.
What's that?
Romeo and Juliet, you don't even know why you get it.
Yeah. Perhaps.
It means something.
Everything means something. So anyway, so Carl Jung develops these things called the archetypes. And he argues that there are these types of personalities that all of us fit into one of them. You can take these tests, which will tell you kind of which archetype you identify with. And you have a series of them, like for example, you have the hero archetype. And this is something that he says we all know and understand without having to learn about. So if I come in here and say, hey, look, this guy's a hero, you all look at him and go, wow. And I don't have to tell you what a hero is. I don't know if any of you ever had to have it explained to you what a hero was. My guess is probably not. You just intuitively know what a hero is. If I tell you that someone's a jester, someone's a joker, well, you kind of already intuitively know what they are. And the idea is that you fit into one of these types of categories. Now, the problem Jung points out is that, let's say that you are I don't know, let's say that you're a caregiver. And that's one of one of the archetypes, caregiver. And so you start living your life, but you don't realize that this is what you are. And you really want to be a hero. So you start acting like a hero. Jung points out that this is one of the things that's going to lead to a lot of neuroses, psychological problems within you, mental health problems, because you're trying to live up to being something that you're not. You're not a hero, you're a caregiver. But everybody wants to be the hero because we want that kind of status and those accolades. We want everybody to go like, wow, look at that person who's a hero. And everyone wants to be a hero until it comes time to do hero shit. And one of the things it is to be a hero is to self-sacrifice. So we think of the hero like the person who goes out there and is victorious. Oh, that's only part of it. You'll notice that most of the time great heroes only become great heroes because they sacrifice themselves in some way. It doesn't mean they necessarily die from it, they can survive it, but it takes self-sacrifice to become this thing. Because that's what people admire, the fact that you're willing to give up yourself for the rest of us. And then, so the hero goes out, they experience it, and they come back and they tell us all about it. So we also have to be able to learn from their journey as well. So, but again, if you're a caregiver and you're trying to live up to the archetype of the hero, something's not quite going to be right in your life. And that means you can do some of the hero things, but even if you're heroic, you're not going to feel satisfied because you're not being the thing that you are. It's like a bobcat. Why is he so pissed off? Because he won't accept the fact that he's a miserable four-legged piece of shit. Instead, he's trying to live up to being a tiger. He's not a tiger, though. He's a bobcat. He should stay in his lane. So a caregiver, same idea. Now, if you are the caregiver, what that means is that you are that selfless personality. You want to make sure that everybody else is taken care of, everybody else is fed, and so forth. So far, so good? Okay, so now, here becomes the issue. If you have this person in your life who is always trying to take care of you, maybe trying to give you stuff, maybe trying to, and you're like, no. Oh, I hate when people do stuff for me. You know, and some of you I'm sure like that. You want to be independent. You like it when people do you favors or when people give you things. Understand, in that case, it's not about you. It's about them. They're not doing it because they want something from you. They're doing it because they want to fulfill what their archetype is. And when you stop them from being this thing, you stop them from being what they are. You stop the bobcat from being the bobcat. You stop the giraffe from being the giraffe. And you stop the caregiver from being the caregiver. And that means that they can't live a fulfilling life because they can't fulfill their archetype, the thing that they are. Now, being able to distinguish when you have a caregiver in your life and when you have an opportunistic predator in your life, that's wisdom. There's a good chance that if your grandmother wants to feed you, let her feed you, man. I'm not hungry. It ain't about you, man. It's about her wanting to feel like she's done something positive, meaningful, and purposeful in her life. And that's how she expresses it, because she takes care of people. She makes you something, that really ugly hat or whatever, or she buys you that video game cartridge for a Nintendo 64, which hasn't been around for 25 years. Just say, thank you, Grandma. Don't be like, what is this? I don't even have this. Don't complain about it. Just take it and say thank you very much. It's not about whether or not you can actually play the game. It's about her feeling like she's done something for you that's positive. And so if you come across this person, let them be themselves. There are lots of different ones. You've got the joker, the person who, you know, obviously we figure out what that is, the person who tells the jokes, the comedian. You've got the sage, that's the wise person. You've got the rebel, that's the person who seeks liberation. You've got the magician, that's the person who tries to transform things from one thing into another. Not necessarily the person who does literal magic, who's always trying to take a situation and transform it into something else, or wants to take a person and transform them. And then probably one of the least satisfying ones, but one of the most common ones, is the every person. That's just the common person. They're not really a caregiver, they're not a hero, they're not really a magician, they're just kind of like pretty typical. And that pisses people off when they find out that that's what they are, because they don't want to be this thing. Yeah?
If there's a hero, wouldn't there be a villain?
So that's what you end up with. All of these things have a shadow portion to themselves. So just like you, there's a you that you show the world, which is the positive attributes you want to show the world, and then there's a shadow aspect to yourself. And these are the things that you keep hidden from the world. They're not necessarily the things that are evil and wicked. We tend to think of it that way because that's what's associated with the word shadow. But it's just whatever it is that you don't want to show the world. If you're somebody who's hurt, you've been hurt when you're a kid and you don't trust, but you don't want to show that to the world, that's in your shadow. Instead, you present this face of, oh no, I'm fine, everything's great. Now, Jung again says that this is what causes these mental health problems. You have this shadow, which is just as much a part of you as the persona, and it's always trying to bubble over and express itself, but we're always trying to suppress it, push this thing down. And if eventually you can suppress it as much as you want, but eventually, boom, it's going to explode. And then those things will burst out of us. I think I've talked about this before. Maybe you're that person that you get in an argument with somebody, and finally they push you over the edge and you get so pissed off that you just punch a wall. And then afterwards you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that. And that's not me. Please don't do that to me. Yeah, is it related to this? Then don't ask it. So you say, well, I would never do that. But yeah, you would. That's exactly what you would do under those circumstances. So now you learned about yourself, and the reason that you probably did it was because you didn't recognize in yourself that you were about to do this. You didn't realize, wow, or you didn't accept it about yourself. Oh my goodness, if I get pushed a little bit further, I'm going to punch a wall. If you at least acknowledge, if you don't suppress that, but instead you integrate it into your personality, now you know that you're capable of that. And that's what stops you from getting to the point where you do that. That's what stops you from being an abusive person. That's what stops you from being, or just, I guess, someone who's full of resentment and contempt and takes it out on the world. You have to recognize it about yourself. It's just uncomfortable for us to do that. So there's that shadow aspect of yourself. All of these have a shadow aspect as well. You've got a hero, but the opposite of the hero, the shadow part of that, of course, is going to be the villain. You got the caregiver. Of course, you have the person who's incredibly selfish. And the opposite of that, you've got, the ruler is one of them. One of my friends is very much so, he's the ruler archetype. And of course, if you go too far with being a ruler, you become a tyrant. You've gone too far in that aspect. You don't want to be that person. And so, someone who's a rebel, the other side is someone who's a conformist. A sage, you have the fool. The sage is the person who seeks wisdom. You've got the fool, who's the person who rejects wisdom. Not just doesn't seek it, but actually rejects it, doesn't want to hear it. So all of these have a negative aspect as well. And so tell me if you've heard this before. You want to be in the midpoint. You don't want to fill yourself with the vices on the two extremes. So the point of all of that is that you've got this caregiver, and some people are that personality type. And so this is the thing. Love means that they're giving something that they don't have to someone who doesn't necessarily want it. But the kind thing is to take it, because you're helping them become what they are and who they are. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Yeah.